How much did you get done?
Well, I finished cleaning up a section and a chapter, and then I recorded another chapter. And then that was as far as in that chapter. There's a song, sort of like two stanza song, sort of sung by the villains. So I had to kind of stop there and work on getting that right. Because you noticed that was something you noticed when I had sang that other song in the chapter 3 that you heard. Hey puppy, how are you? We're just talking about stuff. You had heard when I had done it in the space, it came together a lot better.
Mm.
So sort of doing it over and over again, trying to find it, so to speak. But it was good. It was good. It's progress. It's doing something, right?
Absolutely.
No, she's left.
Yeah, little by little. Do you have a tweet that links to your book? Because I noticed the pinned tweet on your account doesn't.
I thought it did. It doesn't.
No, it just lists where it is, but it doesn't actually have a link.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Well, I will have to go and mess with that. I had another one up that had like a little video. It was just sort of an image based video that I had put up there. So maybe I'll put that one back up. I'm gonna go see if I can. I'll go mess with that later. Thanks for pointing that out. Someone did ask me. They said, "Where's the link to your book?" I didn't realize that's why they were asking.
Yeah, I always try to put up a link that way. The less work you make other people do, the easier it is to guide them there.
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. So, there it is. There's your book, Exploring National Park. You've got the yellow outline like National Geographic.
Yeah, good eye. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a copyrighted or trademarked feature.
There you go.
Of their publication as it is.
But it gives a nod to oh gosh, authority isn't the right word. I guess maybe it is sort of an not authorized, but sort of a known thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Realizing it. That's
part of their branding.
No, yeah, it's good. It's clever. Well, hey puppy, how are you this morning? Can you just listen? You gonna come up or? Anyway, yeah, yeah, it's weird going in and doing the recording for it because it reminds me of the story more, which is kind of an interesting thing to do as I'm writing the second book because it informs the second book, kind of. It's kind of doing them in parallel, so to speak, because it reminds me of things that I can pull into book 2 or that I should. So it's been kind of neat that way.
I need to open my notes for today.
Hey, go ahead, puppy. How are you? Hey, Dan.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I actually asked to come up. The sound has been very wonky for me in spaces. So I don't never know if it's my device or whatever. So sometimes I'll leave and return, which I did when I joined this space. I could hear you and then I couldn't hear you. Anyway, so sorry for the overshare, but
no,
I just wanted you to know if I'm acting weird, it's dipping in and out. That's why. But also, I was so productive getting stuff done yesterday that I have to keep going. But so I'll probably mostly be listening. But a lot of what I'm doing is organizing and clearing out the house where I've raised a family and lived for over 30 years. And so, yeah, but I did write part of a song recently. And so today I'll mostly be writing lists, but I am interested. I don't know if you'll get around it, but just tools, including digital tools and for organizing my writing projects and other projects. For example, music. And I mean, I'm terrible at stuff, but so I'll learn it, and I don't have to learn it all today. But that thing where sometimes somebody will make like a running tweet within a tweet. You can see a whole thread.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a Twitter tool, but I was like, that is so cool. I want that. But part of this is I have my board meeting this evening for the music association that I'm on, and I'm taking on some projects. And let's just say organizing and I'm the person that starts to write by starting the just blurt everything for 5 minutes, then do your outline. I'm generally not the one that starts with the outline. Things get messy. So if any of that's of use, let me know. And I know you've got some familiarity with AI, I believe, Michael, too, which I've had an
Yeah.
aversion to. But I'm like, if I could select a particular tool that could help me not edit my work or whatever, but you know what I mean, organize it,
Mm-hmm.
in a reasonable fashion so that I can find sources, for example, that I bookmarked earlier, and maybe group those into areas, or maybe you just do a word search using AI and that helps do that, etc. So I'll be quiet and I'll just be grateful for whatever you share today. And if I'm not talking, it's because my hands are busy.
Oh, it's all good. Chime in whenever. This is going to be structurally the same as like all the other spaces, just trying to make a monthly kind of series out of, process, in the sense of both Heidi and I are working on a couple of projects that we are going to release in the near future. She is working on her audiobook, and then obviously the second book in her series she's writing. So she's kind of balancing between those two projects. And then I am working on a short story, which she has taken the time to read and give some feedback on. That was based on the Fall of Tartaria video I did. It's up in the Nest as well, along with her book. And then I'm also working on volume 3 of my Exploring Our National Parks series, which is, a long-standing project that I've been working on that is, heavily pictorial, a lot of editorial material in there too. And then I turn all of that into videos as well. So it kind of, comes from and goes into a bunch of different angles. And this volume of that series is probably the most thought out in a way, I suppose, because I've had a lot of time to think about what that project does and how it's shaped in general versus where it started and where it's gotten to. And I would say that organization is critical for that, just because of how much media is involved with it, and how many different ways it goes. Because initially, it starts with notes and pictures and video, that I take when I'm out visiting parks. And then if I keep like a journal of that trip, I'll kind of use that as, the zero draft of the material, and organizing it, kind of keeping it front of mind, and working through that material and turning it into a manuscript takes a long time. Basically, I would say it's 2 years between each one of those releases so far, and hopefully I'll get to a volume 4 at some point. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I have a few parks that I visited that don't fit into volume 3, just because of the nature of that trip was kind of like a single shot run through 7 parks across the Southwest. And, then I took another trip and have visited other parks and stuff like that since I did that. So it's, you're sitting on this material and basically, organizing it and working your way through it is really important. I would ask you, what are you using to organize your songs or your writing currently that seems to be working for you, or maybe isn't working for you, that you want to use AI or some other ways to catalog and be able to reference that material.
Ooh, so revealing, I need to perform the autopsy, but the patient is still alive. Let's see. I have paper music. We use mostly tabs, although there's fiddle tunes, there's other, whatever you call regular music with the signature clef. But we use also the Nashville numbering system, which is basically Roman numerals in a little set of blocks. So the first phrase might be, 1 1 4 4, then 5 5. Then you can transpose it to any key. And I've physically typed those. And this is another issue. I've bought Microsoft type products my whole life, and I don't know why. 6 years ago, I bought a used Mac. But anyway, so I'm sort of straddling between worlds as part of it. But I'm learning my Mac, and I bought actually the whole whatever suite, or I'm renting it of tools. But part of my problem is I got impulsive, so I bought things like there's an app called Fourscore, Forscore. So I'm like, that would allow that's actually a musical app. I think it started for classical people, but so to be able to have charts, have them available when I'm in the field, so to speak, on my iPad, I would say, and consolidate the mess of paperwork. But then there's also themes, and especially like for songwriting. So I've got a lot of those organized by playlists and likes and tabs on Spotify has been the main one I've been using lately. And sometimes I hate myself, but that's what I mean. So getting that database in a way to another, organizing it by songwriter or singer or genre or period of time, or because it has historical interest to me, and in particular, I'm interested in songs. This will probably just involve doing side research, but let's say songs about coal mining, for example, or I like songs that give, where you can actually feel the grit of, or you can, there's enough of an image that you put the reader there, and we could have a whole thing where I go through the coal mining songs that will break your heart. And some of this comes from me having a career of dealing with workplace injuries and diseases, so I know a lot about to people's lungs, and it's not good. But anyway, my songs, to me, you want a theme and a person, a human who's in a situation, and I want people to need to fill in and imagine, but it's nice too to inform people about stuff that happened. um, and some of that, I feel like, how many young people now, and why would they know what a phone booth is? And so part of me, I'm the boomer, and I've had a dad. My mother's still living. My dad, and she talks about taking the train across the country from North with her sister with notes pinned to them, because my grandma had come a year earlier to take a job, but it took her that long to save up for a place to live, and also no one would rent to them in that Southern Oregon town because they were Catholics. And back then, Catholics were actually at the top of the hate list of the KKK, which is not an easy thing to do. And it was because people were backlashing, being feared of parochial schools. So there, by that, that I'm a kid that went to parochial school, and I've got those. That's a book series in itself, if not a library. But the point is, the history of just my state. I find there's a lot people just don't know, or they assume. So that's one of the things that intrigues me. I like songs that tell a story. Anyway, I'm going on too long. So,
No.
research materials for that, for example, I'm reading about a Southern Oregon town or let's say there's a town called Grants Pass, and there's a Supreme Court case now about it and how homelessness and so on, and the Constitution. And so some of it, I love your idea, though. I'm terrible at, when you're a scientist, scientists keep a journal. Did you know that? It's like they're doing a diary every day. That's the pure form. And my older daughter is like that. And, there's no genetic relationship. She's my stepdaughter technically, but I adore her. But I mean, she was born knowing what a packing list is, And I just only recently discovered the existence of such a phenomenon. I thought you just thought about your trip and started throwing shit in your suitcase. Pardon me. And so you know what I mean. So Michael, the creative ideas are all over the place, and in many ways, going through my home now, it's like this archive. I love the romance genre, as Heidi knows. So for a while, I had collected some information on that and on. So some of it's just organizing it. So it's like, where did I put that? you know but scientists literally have notebooks then that they're not exactly diaries, but I'm thinking when you were saying you did your trip, I'm wondering, would that work just to have a plain old journal of what I did today, and that could include the research I did or the how I did on my project, or I don't know. Does that make sense? What
It does. It does. I'm gonna jump in because sorry, I'm getting a cup of coffee and I have to kind of walk back and forth because there's literally a troll in my kitchen who disconnects my phone and disconnects my internet whenever I go in there. But I digress. You know, the software that helps, if you want to talk software, and I mean, I'm sure anyone, Michael, Mount Timeless, welcome up, but you guys might have some ideas too. But for me, I live in ordered chaos. That's kind of how my mindset is. I can order things for the most part, but there's always like a stack of papers somewhere that I dread looking into, if that gives you an image. But software wise, one of the tools that basically enabled me to write, a 400-page novel was Scrivener, because it allows you to create files. I'm a massive fan of this software. I don't even use Microsoft Word anymore unless I have to. I do everything in Scrivener and just create. Basically, it allows you to create notebooks, and within them, you can have different. So I'm going to say it this way so it's just more clear. So if you're writing a book, you can have each chapter be in a folder, so that you can, if you have an idea for a chapter, you can throw a sheet of paper in there and just have it in there. And so to speak, right? So it's like just you add a file to it, and it's right in there. It is a salvation, because if your mind's running, oh, I want to say this here, I want to say that there, you can put notes in there. You can put a little section, like if you have that moment where something comes to you in the middle of the night and you just need to kind of scratch it out somewhere. I'll sometimes keep, dare I say, an actual pen and paper nearby, and then I'll have that, and then I'll put it in Scrivener and in the section I think it needs to go in, or in a notes section, or in an ideas section. So it allows me to basically do everything that I think you're saying. If I've been on Macs forever, because I came out of publishing and on the editorial side, and all that stuff, it's all Macs because it's all Adobe. And it's pretty much all Adobe at this point. So, sorry, my dog wants something and she's ordering me around. So I would but Scrivener goes on Mac. I think it's a little better of a program on a Mac. I don't know, maybe someone else could speak to this if someone else here is a PC person. But it works really well on Mac, and I love it. And it's doing kind of everything you want it to do. In terms of keeping a journal, I like that idea. I don't actually do that, but I don't know. What do you guys think? I kind of like that idea of maybe just keeping a journal on a particular subject or something like that. It's funny. I've had a mild interest in Thomas Jefferson. I've been reading a lot of his stuff, and he did that. He literally, there's this 800-page book where he, wrote notes about his garden every day. What plant was growing, what wasn't. I mean, it's just lists, really. And sometimes there'd be some letters thrown in, just random stuff. But it was all sort of on a daily basis, and just to keep track of things, kind of the day-to-day of his farm. I mean, he was, among other things, a farmer. So, I mean, that's an interesting idea to do that. I hadn't really thought about that. I don't know. What do you guys think? I hope that helps, Puppy. But I mean, I would, wave the flag of Scrivener everywhere.
So I don't use Scrivener, but I know a lot of people that do and like it because of the capacity to organize the way you're talking about, I think it does markup, right? So you could basically export those files as markup. Do you know?
Yeah, I don't see. Well, if you're talking about going more into the publishing side, for me, I use it as like my workspace.
Yeah.
But the minute I go into like layout and all that stuff, I don't know what you use, but I'm kind of a little bit. I always used Adobe in the past, so for me, it's like InDesign and all
You're
that.
using InDesign to lay out your books that are text?
Yes.
That's intense. Congrats.
Well, I used it when I was working.
Sure.
So when I was in publishing, that's what we used, and yeah, it's a beast. I mean, I hadn't used it in a long time, but InDesign, yeah. I mean, I use InDesign. I use Photoshop. I use
Yeah.
Illustrator. I mean, I think everybody knows Photoshop and Illustrator they're kind of the gold standard, as is InDesign.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's hard to use. I wouldn't recommend using it to anybody. I just do it because I used it while I was laying out magazines.
100%. Same thing. Yeah. Like we used InDesign for our monthly print publication, and that was heavily pictorial and graphic, a lot of ads and things like that. So it totally makes sense when you're dealing with vector and you are also trying to make something print ready for a physical printer that's running like 10,000 copies or more of a publication. It's super useful because that's, that is the standard. For me, I'm going to talk about two programs that I have begun using over the last handful of years. The first one for my books, I just use Pages, to be honest with you, and that's like the Mac equivalent of Word. So it's essentially, very easy to use if you're familiar with any, editorial program, document making program in that way, because you can basically export to a bunch of different file types. It also is required for natively loading up to Apple Books. So they will basically take your manuscript and pull that file right into Apple Books. So that is, another channel for distribution, but it's also, just a necessity for working and interfacing with their platforms. The other program that I use that I would say is equivalent to Scrivener in some ways, and also excels beyond Scrivener in another way, is a program called Obsidian. And I know I've talked about it on the writer's block in the past, but it will do markup and allow you to break things into segments in a way that's similar to Scrivener, probably a little more articulated even than Scrivener, though it is not necessarily made for writers. It really is, a general organizational tool, and it's free. I don't remember how much Scrivener is, like $50 or something. So Obsidian is free, but it basically has all these different types of plugins. There's a guy I know, and he does a bunch of videos. Maybe I'll dig one of his tweets up to be able to post it up into the nest. But like he, covers all of these different plugins and walks through a bunch of different examples of how to utilize Obsidian for writing and just, documenting and categorizing and cataloging information and thoughts and developing your ideas and stuff like that. Great tool. I use it all the time. But the way that I use it more predominantly than for writing is for its flow charting capacity. It basically, has a graphing area where you can create all these different little segments and stuff like that. You can put markup in there. You can put graphics in there. You can put links in there. I don't know if you can link within your own system, but you can definitely link to websites. I have not exhausted that program in any capacity. I'm not a power user of it, but it has been fantastic to document the projects that I am working on, like Chicago 1893, the Exploring Our National Parks project, just to be able to see a really kind of big bird's eye view of what is going on with those projects in general. I'm going to try and search for a tweet, but I would say those are kind of like my, when I'm, oh yeah, I did find a tweet. Here we go. So this will give you a look at its flow charting kind of graph paper area. There's a picture in that tweet, and that's for the Chicago project, and kind of shows everything going on with that. And that's again, the graphical interface side of things, not the text side of things, which I use a lot less. The thing about journaling is I'm not a regular journaler. I don't do that in any sort of consistent way at all, but I did do it for the trip that I took 2 years ago to the national parks, because I knew that I was going to write another book for that series. It was kind of planned that way. I'd already done 2, and I wanted to do better. Instead of kind of coming at things after the fact, I was really trying to front load a lot of the thought process so that I could capture the moments that I was experiencing out on trails and driving and going to different parks and stuff like that. And for that one, I wrote physically in a notebook, and then would dump that into Notepad, which is the Mac iOS app. I just keep it on the home row of my phone. That way it's easy to get in there. And I do that for every writing project or any project. Like even the same right now, when Heidi and I get together and talk about the themes and topics that we're going to do here in these spaces, I keep all those notes, and then I just screenshot it and send it over to her, and then make adjustments to it as we keep talking. And that's a really fast way for me to make sure that like I can jump in and out of those ideas. I do that for even writing in general before I start to do layout or even put anything into Dropbox to share with beta readers and stuff like that. I just write there, and I keep all my notes and research and links to stuff there. And that way, it's available on my phone, it's available on my computer, iPad, whatever. That's just what I do in those very early phases in regards to categorizing, cataloging, and trying to make sure that I don't miss things, or that I can grab things in the moment when you think about them. And that's, again, in terms of the topic today, like that's how I really initiate the very early phases of making progress. And I'm a slow writer, so like I do a lot of research on stuff, regardless of the topic, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. So like if I'm looking at websites, and I'll open 20 of them and then kind of read through that material and grab up the ones that are useful for that project and dump them in there. Obviously, they're not going to make it to the manuscript. A lot of that material is not. But I have it there and can reference it, and like it's out of my mind. I don't rely on my brain in that way to track all those things, because that's just such a heavy load. I want to be focused on producing and again, making the actual progress of writing or editing images or videos and things like that.
Yeah, that is the issue I have too. Sometimes I let that stuff fall because I can't focus on just the creative side. So it's like, I can have all this structure around me, but if I'm not creating anything, it's sort of pointless. You know what I mean? So that's not I looked at that. So it just lets you set up just these flow charts and such. That like to kind of to throw out your ideas of what you're doing. Because I'll do that on a piece of paper, and then I don't know, half the time lose the piece of
Right.
paper because like I function in ordered chaos. Puppies agree. Yeah, I know, right?
Only
That's
half
the
the
thing.
time. Well, I was going to say high five.
Yeah, right. There we go. Great minds mess up alike, right?
And I do that too. I write this stuff down on paper. I have a notebook that's graph paper, and I keep lists and do these drawings that way as well. But like once you start to want to move things around or make adjustments, then you have to redraw the whole thing. once I've got a drafted idea, then I'm putting it into Obsidian. It's digital and I can move things around. What's really great, you're not necessarily seeing on that image, is just how flexible all those node points are in those groups. So when you move them around, all those arrows will move and adjust as well, kind of automatically, which is just awesome. Because when you think of something, again, like when I'm moving through that stuff, once I've thought of it, I want to document it, and then I don't want to think about doing that thing again. I want to advance. I want to get to the next thought. Yeah, what's up, puppy?
Oh my God, I don't know. I had a joke and I forgot it. I feel like I'm levitating right now. I'm so happy. So I I mean I have so many notes and scraps of stuff around. So part of it is okay. So you are this. Obsidian has been recommended to me. I can't talk this morning. I guess I haven't had my coffee yet. And so you two people I really trust. So I'm gonna check it out and thank you for. And I'm the opposite of Heidi. I mean, just knowing these programs or knowing, and I've learned I have this thing dyscalculia, which thank you world. So I will, and I'm also ADHD hyper. So I'll get focused in making the boxes bigger or smaller, or the technical stuff. So I love it that you just throw it there, and Obsidian will do that for you. Thank you. But so you could. I see what you mean. Once you've got an idea and you're creating something, um, that's it. But I mean, yeah, my problem is I've got inspiration, I've got notes, I've got links, I've got references listed everywhere. So maybe my first thing is go around and take a picture of those and put them somewhere. And the reason I was thinking of AI early on, I think Michael, was to somehow think of my collected research song, whatever I have, that I was more that I could find it because I need to start to go into do a pad or notes because that's where I've been throwing things. And also, what can you throw voice memos, videos? I think you said for your park thing, you could throw links into Obsidian. But I was thinking for saving stuff across different media.
Yeah.
Like I will tend to do voice memos, grocery
Mm-hmm.
list, blah blah blah, or just. But then I guess you could do a talk to text, but that's work, like less work. Save it, put it, never have to look back. Something.
Right. Yeah. I don't do voice memos because, again, like you have to come back to it and then transcribe it or something. I would probably more strongly advocate for voice to text if that's how you ideate. Like, make it easy on yourself, because otherwise you're spending twice as much time, maybe even more realistically, because if you're doing a recording of your voice and then you have to go back and listen to it again and transcribe it, you're basically giving yourself twice as much work or more, depending on how fast you're talking and things like that, what you're missing, or as you type to try and keep up with your stream of consciousness speaking. That can be kind of tough at times. But there are lots of great voice to text. I know, like, your iPhone will do that, your Mac will do that. It's not necessarily as good as some other transcription software that's out there. And again, like, I don't do that. That's just not necessarily how I operate. So I can't recommend anything out of the gate to you. But if it is the way that you work, I would say, like, make it like going downhill. Make it as easy as possible for yourself so that you're not basically creating more work for yourself. And there are people I know that write the way you're talking about and then come back and edit later. And that is useful. I have used transcription software for interviews and, client work and stuff like that, because it allows me to, grab stuff. I guess in some ways I do it for a first draft of some kind of journalistic stuff or coverage material. So, like, with the videos that I create with the AI group, I'll do like a voiceover walkthrough of my ideas just to get them out of my head, and also to relay them to the other people that I'm working with. Or if there's not much there, at least they can get inside of my head and perceive the trajectory of where I'm trying to get to with it. If it's just images or a little bit of video or music or whatever, that way, they have a slightly more improved view of what I'm thinking. And it's not necessarily like they have to kind of read tea leaves about it. And I have taken those voiceover recordings and had them transcribed by AI. There's Otter AI does that very well. There's other programs too, and you could probably, if you're going slow enough, you could just like put your phone next to your computer and it would transcribe that stuff if the volume's decent and the microphone's sensitive enough. That's not something I don't think I've tried, but it is probably something that's viable. I'm always about like trying to find free or very cheap ways to make the work easier, because the amount of time that you spend doing the work is a huge investment. If there are tools that are worth paying for, obviously, you have to do that. That's just the nature of being a creative. Like the Adobe Suite, there are some programs that Adobe offers that cost-wise are just, incomparable. And you basically have to lean on them for that. But on the other side of things, like if you're still developing your workflows, then I would say test things out and see what's working and kind of follow wherever the momentum is. And for me, in the early phases of like drafting a manuscript, it really is writing stuff down or taking notes, printing that out, and then working on that physically with a pen or a pencil and kind of going in and fleshing out words and sentences or writing a few hundred words and then putting that back into the computer. Again, here I am kind of contradicting myself about like making more work for yourself. But at the same time, like, that's just the nature of making incremental progress. If I have a Sunday afternoon where I'm hanging out and I have a couple of manuscripts that I've printed out and I can kind of write that way, I do find that there's a great value in physically writing. And it doesn't take me that long, to convert that stuff to digital after the fact. I'll kind of roll through it later that evening and get it put into the computer. And then I'm seeing that stuff again, and it's contextualized against all of the existing material. And, throughout the week, I'll jump in and make little adjustments. If I'm hanging out somewhere, sometimes I'll just, if you have a little bit of time, I'll go back and reread the digital material and maybe adjust a word here or add a phrase there or add a sentence or a few paragraphs. I wrote like 500 words the other week just hanging out at a place, and that was a shock because it was very spontaneous, and that's not, grab that thread when it's available to you. But at the same time, like, how often does that happen to me? Not too often. I have to basically like carve out those Sundays to really like hammer on stuff that way. But throughout the week, little tidbits. I look at that in the same way that you might be talking about your scraps of paper and little notes and stuff. I cannot do that anymore because I lose that stuff and it's all over the place. I keep a sticky notepad for that kind of stuff right by my computer whenever like something I have to make a note about something, and I'll write that down on that, just because that you're working on the computer or whatever, you have a bunch of programs open, you can't necessarily flip over to something. Or if it's about scheduling and stuff like that, or you're talking to somebody, you want to take some notes down, that's a very easy way of doing that too. That's just a little bit of my process there. Hopefully it helps. For anybody that's hanging out, if you want to come out and come on up to the stage and talk, we are following the general structure. There's a few other prompts Heidi and I have, but we kind of jumped into this stuff with Poppy when she came in early. Also, Ricky, welcome to the stage. You're hanging out as well.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Will, my fellow co-host for the Screw Tapes Letters has joined us.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
Doing with Honey Badger tonight. So I believe he does a lot of creative work. So good to have you, my friend. On what you're saying, I want to just, from the creative side, I want to say something that I always think is important is I don't know that it's always important, or I don't know if it's always useful to write down every single idea you have. I mean, sure, write them down, but sometimes the idea you may collect a lot of minutia by doing that is something to consider, right? You may want to just let certain things go. It's like the things that stick with you, you want to hang on to. So collecting every single thought can drown you just as can be too much weight. So that's something to consider. I mean, there has to be a balance with that. So in terms of organizing, and those thoughts and those ideas that continue to stick with you are things that you should that float up to the surface, shall we say, are things you should really consider are probably the ones to hold on to, and that's kind of an important thing and part of this. It's like, don't feel that if you lose some scrap of paper, there was some brilliant thing on it, because if it was truly spectacular, you wouldn't have forgotten it. I would just throw that out there too. Hey, Will, what's up?
I am well. How is everybody? This is this is the first of the writer's block spaces that I've been in, so it's joy to be listening in, Michael and Heidi.
Well, it's good to have you. I know you do videos and stuff, and I've seen them, and so it's kind of I know you're kind of more of a creative than I realized, aren't you, sir?
Well, I mean, I also do the other hidden side of my life is that I also do freelance as a script editor for the screen industry for film and TV. I also collaborating on some other bits and pieces, but it's been on the back burner for a while. Things move forward and things move away, and I wrote, I think I've had some poems published when I don't think it did happen a few years ago. So when I was and I think I was an undergraduate, but one of the things that I think that one of the things that I always say, especially because I've literally just got a script, funnily enough, it's that I'm working on as a script editor. I'm about to sit down probably on Thursday and give notes on it. And one of the things that I always encourage, what I find time and time again is writers, young emerging screenwriters, and the principle applies to every genre, to every kind of medium, right? You find so often that there are brilliant ideas and there's no workflow, and a lot of the stuff that gets picked up in editorial is clearly the result of the fact that people are in love with the idea of writing, but are not disciplined enough in editing. And we all hate it. We all love, generating this new stuff. But actually, I think that kind of piggybacking off what you've said, Heidi, that not getting bogged down and thinking that there's somehow something magical about the process of putting something on paper, but actually trusting in procedures that you can rely on time and time and time again. I always, will say, and for myself as well, whatever I'm writing on, whether it's academic or otherwise, I'll keep a little wad of index cards next to whatever I'm working on. So because I have my brain fires off and I'll start thinking about something completely different to what I'm working on. And I will just scribble down on the index card, and then it's committed there. And then, I'll drop it into a little tray. And that way I know that it's there and I can still commit to where I'm at the moment. So I do try to encourage in myself and in the people that I work with, not editing as you're working, not trying to get the sentence perfect, but, getting the thrust of the material out. And then, whether you do it on a page by page basis or a movement by movement basis or a sequence by sequence basis or a chapter by chapter basis, I'm getting this out now, and I know that I'm going to go back and I'm going to have to spend some more time with my thoughts and what I've written, but kind of having that workflow that's replicable and reliable, because I think these systems are more reliable than our kind of creative minds that are sparking off in a million different directions at once. So I think that that's always something that I find interesting. And I was loving the discussion about Obsidian, because I have a lot of good things to say about Obsidian as well. Didn't work out for me in the end, but I know that it's a hugely promising piece of software that is brilliant.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you make a really good point about that. I mean, that's why they have drafts, right? That's why you have a rough draft and a first draft. And that's why people who have written books say things like the true art of writing is in editing and all of these things. And I think that happens a lot. You get this brilliant idea, then you get bogged down in how brilliant it is, and you start celebrating your brilliant idea in your head, and you don't ever write anything down. And it is a lot of work. And I remember reading one writer where he said, to be a great writer, you have to be an incredibly selfish person. And it's kind of difficult because because you have to be selfish and you have to just say, leave the room. I'm busy. I have no time for you. I'm writing, I mean, really what it comes down to. And, it's none of us really want to be that person. I mean, part of what you're doing when you're writing is sort of attempting to communicate with humanity, and the process it's counterintuitive. You have to do that by telling humanity to go away, or telling not humanity, but the important people in your life to, give me a minute. I can't deal with you right now. So there's this contradiction to it that is hard to deal with. And I think, that's the thing. I will say, when I was in magazine publishing, we didn't necessarily always want the best authors, but we wanted the ones. I mean, it would be great if we had a good author, but the thing that was important was that they met the deadlines. Because I mean, that's really the thing with it. Because I mean, I, as an editor at the time, I could fix someone who was, mediocre writer. I mean, there would be a line where it was just, it was too much, but where their skills at writing did not. And I was in trade publication, so it was like their technical knowledge may have been spectacular, but their ability to write a sentence was so problematic that I couldn't, fix it. But it was much better to just deal with the people who may not have been the best, but who turned things in on time. So there's this concept of schedule. I think Will really brings up a good point, and I would recommend that as best you can. You can't just say, "Oh, I have all the time in the world." You have to kind of set some deadlines for yourself. And when you don't meet them, you got to kind of say, "Hey, I'm not meeting my deadlines." Because that will happen for various reasons, but the more stuff you have out there. I mean, Michael and I were sort of talking about this. It's like the thing with publishing and getting things out there that will help with marketing, right? Which is the hard part of this, is to create a critical mass of content. So when you start to have that critical mass, people start to notice you, start to notice what's going on. And part of getting that critical mass out is to do the work and create content and put it out. So, that happens day by day, and I think incrementally, it's like there's the great book, right? Bird by bird. You have to just keep working at it. And so, like Michael says, you got 500 words out. Well, maybe that's a goal for him to work toward. So, that said, I think that, oh gosh, I just lost. So that I lost my train of thought. So, I mean, that's the point, right? I mean, if you want to do this, you have to realize that it is actually work, and it can be very unappreciated a lot of the time. So you have to just decide if that's that thing. And I mean, you will. I mean, if you're in here and you're thinking about it, I mean, obviously you care. So,
And just quickly to tack onto that, Heidi, and I'll be quiet. I have to go and lead the Angelus in five minutes. But just to tack onto that, you're right about this critical mass thing. There is a reason why, once, for example, a novelist or a copywriter or a journalist, when they break through, um, their whole workflow changes, because all of a sudden there are external pressures which force them to make more kind of expedient decisions in terms of time management and meeting deadlines versus, this nebulous idea of the perfect line or whatever it might be. And it's more difficult with people who are perhaps, yes, approaching that point and getting stuff out there and are brilliantly competent and, even talented and potentially future celebrated copywriters or whatever it might be, whatever your sphere of writing is. And one of the ways that I've suggested previously, if people can't afford, you don't need an editor to be a good writer, right? Let's all be editors in ourselves. Let's have our own internal editorial process. But one of the fun ways that I say this and have made a suggestion previously is like give like $30 to a friend of yours, and and then they'll give it back to you when you hand them a draft or something. Like a close trusted friend, create something, some little simulate, like whatever it might be, just creating, or whatever it is, some promise or something. I think that's how I know it's silly to say, but that's how Jennifer Saunders finished the absolutely fabulous movie, the AbFab movie script, that she'd made a bet 5 years ago that she, with Dawn French, that if you don't write that script by this date, in 5 years time, then you have to give me like £500,000 or something, which is obviously not everybody can do that, but you can just find a way to create that external pressure or that, that reward to turn it in, and do it with friends, do it with whatever it might be, and just then get used to turning drafts in, because I think that, as Heidi said, is how writers actually stay in work, and that's actually something that editors and producers and whatever sphere it might be, they're making an assessment as to, is this person going to be a writer for the long haul, or does it take them, kind of like Donna Tartt, 10 years to write one book? They're looking for people who they're going to be able to work with consistently, not just unicorns.
Ew, Donna Tartt. Don't get me started on that. I don't know. Can I just have a side question? What did you think of The Secret History, Will? I would love to hear your opinion.
I loved it, but I read it when I was 16 or 17, I think. So I was originally supposed to be a classicist. So I was so I'd been studying Latin since
Right.
10 and then Greek since 14. So it was that, and I was a very brooding, precocious teenager, and so I loved it, and the book still has a really profound impact on me, but I haven't read anything else that she's written. I think that book sticks with me just because of the point, you know how it is that, where you were in life rubs off on a book, and rather than it. But what do you think? Do you disapprove?
Okay, well, I'm gonna hold back I read that when I was about 23, 24, and I had done. Sorry, guys. Tell us if we need to stop. But we're gonna nerd. I need to nerd out on this with somebody just once. I had read The Secret History about that age, so I was just outside. I think the target audience and the age you were at. I think if I had read it at your age, I would have been more impressed by it. But I had come out with a group of people. We had all been philosophy majors for a couple of years before I switched to being an English major. I was working in publishing, and so I think we all had a bit of and I was in San Francisco, so I think we all had a bit of a snobby response to it. And I don't know that it's a fair one that I had at the time, if that makes sense. So everyone keeps telling me how much they have loved it, so I feel like I need to give that book a second chance. But I'm wondering at my current age and time in my life if I will still have the same sort of reaction to it, or if I will appreciate it more. But it was interesting to see somebody, you actually talking about, studying Greek, because we had all studied Greek, Attic Greek and all of this. So I don't know. I will stop there. This is not really fading into this. This is another conversation entirely. But I will go back to what you said. There was the thing I was thinking about, that critical mass. So one of the things that you'll see people doing, and it can go both ways, you'll see a lot of people putting books out. They'll put like 3 or 4 books out a year. Poppy and I, we have a soft spot for romance, right? So they will put those out. Those romance writers will write books that are like 60,000 words, which is, I don't know, maybe 200-ish pages. They'll put those out. They'll write them 3 or 4 a year, put them out, and they have a catalog of like 90 books within no time. And, it's impressive because they're quite successful at it. They make a living at it, and they have an audience who knows every 3 or 4 months, I get a new book, I get a new story, I get a new, and who doesn't want to read a story about two people falling in love? It's delightful, so they put them out, and it just creates this critical mass. But the other side of that is it is a tremendous amount of work, as Will's pointing out, to do that. So when you have someone like Donna Tartt, who gets a tremendous amount of accolades, but I think she only has 2. Does she only have 2 books?
She has 3. She has the Head
3.
Protégé, The Goldfinch, The Secret History, and The Little Friend. And I think that they're also connected because she made so much money at such a young age. I think that then set her up to be able to only write 1 book every 10 years, right? And it is that on average. It's 1 book every 10 years that she's written.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, because the Secret History came out in the early 90s. So
different era, though, compared to where we're at today.
Well, God only knows where we're at today. It's madness, right? I don't know what era we're in.
I mean, just in the sense that, look at how many publishers there were and the consolidation that's occurred over the last 30 years. I'm not a prolific writer. I release material often, but I'm not necessarily writing a lot. I think my biggest book is maybe 10,000 words. For somebody like a Stephen King, who just slams out material and has been writing seemingly a book every year for decades, that is mind blowing to me.
I will say, if you haven't read Stephen King's book on writing, that's, to me, probably, it is amazing. You really should read it. Anyone who wants to write should read that book. One of the things he points out is how he's able to do it is because he was poor. He was a blue-collar guy and maintains that mentality. And that's the thing he says in the book, and that's, I think, what Will and I we're all saying is that, he doesn't look at it like, oh, it's all artsy fartsy and, I'm going to do this. He's like, this is my job. Plumbers don't go to work and say, oh, I can't do plumbing today. I have plumber's block. I do my job. He shows up every day and does his work. And I think, he has that impetus, and that's part of it, right? That's part of making that progress that we're talking about is you have this creative side to you, but it is worthless without order, right? That's just the reality of it. And I think Stephen King explains that, shows that, says it the best in that book, because you see this person who just, it is my job, it is what I do to make money to feed my family. That's his mentality, just like a plumber or anybody else. It's a very blue collar mentality, which I commend highly because it look what he's done.
Absolutely.
100%. Sorry to discourse and ditch, but I have to go, and I'm supposed to be in another space in 2 minutes. This has been a treat. Thank you. It's been a joy to meet you, Michael, and as always, a joy to see you, Heidi. And I will see you later for Screwtape.
You will, and you're welcome anytime. We do it every Tuesday morning. Take care.
So, in general, this is kind of the kickoff for a series of workshop spaces that we'll do once a month, right? We're going to work through these topics in the same way that we always do on Writer's Block, but it's also going to allow Heidi and I to kind of check in with the projects that we're doing. Additionally, for folks that are working on writing or working on trying to get their material published or out there, I'm going to offer consultation. Basically, if there's people that want to, meet up and go over their work once a week or twice a month or whatever, DM me, hit me up, and we can talk about scheduling and, the pricing of that and stuff like that to make availability for you. But I suppose, in terms of this space and what we will be doing, on a month by month basis, it's going to allow us to not only do that check-in, but have the discussions and hopefully give people the inspiration to make progress with their work and get it out there and kind of see how we're going about it. I know you have your hand up. I'm going to get to you in just a second. But I want to at least talk about the projects that we have going on as well. So Heidi, maybe give a little bit about the process where you're at right now with the audiobook and maybe the second book in your series.
Sure. I talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but yeah, I have the first book out. It's, I guess, up in the Jumbotron, whatever we're calling it this week, the Xbox. And so I'm writing the second one, which I had a sort of a rough for. It was a very small rough. So I've been working on that for quite a while, it seems. It hasn't been 10 years. I'm hoping to finish it. I'm about probably 20,000 words to the end, which puts me, it's about 120,000 words it'll be. That's my sort of sweet spot. That's about the length of the first one. So this one will be probably roughly the same size, and I'm getting there. I've been deleting and adding and deleting and adding, so I'm that kind of thing. And I'm also working on the audiobook for the first book. I'm doing that with the first book divides. I've got a fellow, Chris, he's on here, if you know positively Chris. Him and I are narrating the audiobook because it sort of splits pretty evenly, the first novel, between a male and a female point of view. So I thought it would be nice to have the male point of view read by a male as opposed to me doing it. I always like that when I'm listening to audiobooks, especially if it's divided up like that. So that's what's going on. And I'll tell you, it's interesting if you're doing these projects, especially if you have a series you're working on. This is something I would suggest. I'm doing the audiobook for the first book as I'm writing the second book. So I'm revisiting the original material. And I had said this, it's really informs what's going into the second book in a lot of ways, in terms of sometimes there's just subtle references that because I'm right in the first book and I'm in the second book simultaneously, if that makes sense. I can grab things and use them to tie the two together, and that I think are creating more depth to the second book. So that's something I would throw out there for you all to consider when you're doing all of this. It's super helpful, and I think it's going to be a lot more. It's just going to create a better story, even for the reader, because if they've read the first one, they're going to be feeling those ties. I would hope those allusions back, and I think it's something to really consider. To constantly be revisiting, especially if it's a series, constantly be revisiting that earlier material as you're going forward, because I don't know. I think I've said it like 5 times, so I will stop there, but it helps a lot. So that's kind of where I'm at. And so I will, feel free to take a look at my first one. It's funny. Here's a weird thing I didn't know. Grok can read your book. I asked Grok to read my book and review it, and it did, which was really bizarre because I'm like, how did it get access? I guess it just did. And so it's a weird thing, I tell you. I'm almost tempted to put the AI review of my book up somewhere, but Maybe I'll put it up here. I think I might do it, but I was sort of waiting till I was a little closer with the audiobook. And I think Chris and I need to sit down, as I've learned, and create a deadline for ourselves, because it's been a little nebulous because we've been learning the software that we're using, which is Adobe Audition, to do the narration. And I would say Michael has been very helpful because he has given us a lot of input in terms of some of the stuff we didn't know and how to fix it. So I will stop there. Thanks.
Yeah, that's solid. Ricky, what are you doing? You're hanging out.
Doing a little CAD work or whatever, but I wanted to drop in and take some, like listen in and see what you guys are doing. I see that this seems to be about writing process.
Is Ricky talking?
He is, yeah.
I can't hear
bummer.
him.
Oh no.
I can hear him. I'll relay it.
Oh, okay.
Or
you could
drop down and come back.
You could drop. Rick, if it drops you. Can everybody else hear Ricky? Am I the only one?
No, I'll
maybe just thumbs up or something. You can hear Ricky, puppy.
Well, I'll be right back.
Okay.
He's gonna come right back.
Let's see if that'll fix it.
Yeah, it probably will.
Spaces are so glitchy. This happens like all the time.
Yeah. While he's coming back. Oh, there he is. He's coming back. We're gonna get him again. Yeah, here he is.
Oh, mic check.
Hello.
Testing.
Excellent. I can hear you now. Great.
Okay, cool. All these conversations about process are very, very interesting, and I like to hear about software. I've made it known that I'm working on my own writing process book, and such has dimensions for how I would proceed with my creative obsession, which is what I call my writing. One can say that it's selfish to be a writer. I believe William Burroughs says that if you don't like sitting in a room by yourself for years of your life, that you should not be a writer, because it is very solitary, traditionally speaking. And I find that to be the case, and I love it personally. I have a bit of PTSD and nervous conditions, and I tend to overstimulate very quickly, so it's nice to be solitary. I design projects by their word count, which is like a journalistic take, because it's like you're given an assignment, well, write this many words. And it's like, if you write too much, if you write too little, that's not what we said to do. You're supposed to write what we said. So genre has the same thing. And what is considered, standard, industry standard, has the same thing. So once I know what I'm writing, say I'm writing a short novel like 60 to 100K or something, I just design it by blocks of 10K. My chapters tend to be around 2,000 words long, because I'm into short stuff. It's good for pacing control. It addresses the attention span of the modern reader to have short chapters. And it gives the reader a sense of accomplishment, because I'm primarily a novelist. I have written shorts. I have a book of shorts I'm hoping it will be out by the end of the year, and it has a novella attached to the back of it. But I design by okay, is it 100K? Then I break it up into 10K sections for the purposes of, well, I'm handling this here, I'm taking care of this here, and then each chapter is 2K. And then I break up the chapters into 10 200-word plot points, as I've shared before. I also keep a file, which is a project info dump, which is any particular information that I have goes into that file. I compose on Google Docs for the sake of, if I'm going to collaborate or share it, I have that option to do so. Used to use Pages years ago when I composed exclusively on an iPad. And I just kind of plow through. I type very quickly, and the nature of my word budgets means that all the information is there in what I call page placement. When you're staring at a blank page, it can be intimidating. Like, what am I going to write? What goes down next? But if I have these they're basically like page placement structures and word budget, where it's like 200 word, 200 word. I can design the chapter that way, and the flow of it is malleable and can be corrected very quickly in a digital format. But even if I was writing in notebooks, I would do the same thing. I would have an outline notebook, and I would compose in another notebook. I would take notes in another notebook to just keep everything organized. And that's the extent of it, really. And when I write, I tend to write 1,000 to 2,000 words a day. So the proof's in the pudding. And then the question is, well, is any of it any good? Well, a lot of people dig my stuff. Some people don't. That's like a matter of opinion, really. But the word yield is important, because another writer said, I think it was Stephen King, either 500 or 1,000 words a day, and you can write pretty much anything. And he writes phone books, dig it, right? So it's like the dude should know. Circling back to that book on what Stephen King wrote about writing, I've looked at him, and I've also looked at the Naropa School for Disembodied Poetics, or the Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics in Boulder, Colorado. They have a number of lectures from the actual writers, like Gregory Corso, Allen Ginsberg, William Burroughs, the big wigs who laid out like lots of words in their career, had a lot to say. Those lectures are invaluable for young writers or people who are trying to refine their process. And thank you for allowing me to speak. This is a very informative and useful space, and I want to thank those who are presenting it.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to your writing process book. That's something that I feel like in regards to fiction, it's a weak point for me. I've only started to do fiction over the last 2 years, I would say. It was something that was on my mind, but it was something that I also didn't necessarily have the time or inspiration for. And then it kind of emerged, started finding stories and characters that I wanted to write about. There's something I was going to say. Yeah, I feel like, do I have a novel in me at some point? I don't know. It's so much work and so long. I have been brief in my writing, I suppose, for maybe too long. And being creative in an editorial way, in a fictional way, is something I'm just starting to stretch out into. So, being able to get access to your book is something I'm looking forward to. That's what I was going to say. I started to dig up audiobooks at the beginning of this year that were about the craft of writing fiction, short stories, or just, the methodologies and the components. And that helped a lot, to get it to be less poetic and less just a stream of consciousness sort of writing, and getting it to be more structured and have legitimate arcs to do that research and find those points that other writers have leaned on, has been a huge help for me. If you go to my profile and look for my thread of books that I've read this year and scroll up to the very top, you'll find in the first couple of months I was listening to a bunch of audiobooks that were about that. And, I take little bits and pieces of what all of those different writers have to say, and hopefully have crystallized some of that into my own writing over the course of the last 6 months, as I'm kind of fleshing out, not only the short story I'm working on for the Fall of Tartaria, but also a series of short stories that I'm working on. The first one I hope to get out in spring next year. So yeah, I would say, plug away at the creative stuff and get the process book out. And again, like, to go back to what Heidi was saying in regards to hitting critical mass, I'm trying to continue with the journalistic photographic material that I release, but also get into the fictional short story material and do video as well, and be able to constantly have something to release and promote around in that way, and to put out there for people. Just in this year, I would say like 25% of all the books that I've sold have been sold in the first 6 months of this year, which is, I've only been putting them out for 5 years or whatever. So that's not completely out of skew, but there's still half of the year left. So that's something that I consider to be, an achievement in the sense of authorship and, getting purchase with my momentum as being an entity within the writing space as an author.
On that too, I would say it's like the more stuff you have out, the more interested people are. I've had people say to me, I know you've got one book out, I know you're doing a series, but my friend doesn't want to read it till the whole thing's done because they don't want to have to wait. And I get that. I mean, it's annoying, right? Who wants? I don't write cliffhangers. I'm not a fan of that style. I try to have each story be complete in and of itself. But the cliffhanger is, I don't know why people do it anymore. Most people dislike it quite a lot. But in fact, I don't know anybody who likes it. I mean, I just find that interesting. And I was going to say with that, Michael, you were talking about, I don't know if I have a novel in me. So here's one thing I would throw out. So like my book it's a Western fantasy mashup kind of genre. But here's the thing. When I came out of like trade publication and tech stuff, and I kind of thought I was done with it. I'd had just a bad ending to the whole thing. So I thought, screw this. I'm just going to go get a degree as a nurse, and I'll go do that. So I did. I went and got a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And the problem was all I wanted to do was write about it. I wanted to write about my experience in nursing school. I wanted to write about how rotten nurses are treated just in every possible way, et cetera, so forth and so on. And Poppy will appreciate this. I ran up against something called the HIPAA laws, right? Where you have to protect patients' privacies. So this whole book started out with me trying to find a fictional way I could write about a very real experience, because I was sort of trapped by these rules, which, there's nothing better for creativity than to put it in a cage, I think. Because when it's in a cage, it's forced to come up with a way to get out. And, oh, sorry. Evidently, it's time for the dogs to bark. Guys, hey.
It's all good. We like the pups.
Yeah, well, they want to say hi. Okay, so if Amazon comes to the door, there will be no one will be able to hear anything except them. But anyway, so the point is, I was saying that, there's nothing better for your creativity to be put in a situation where you're not allowed to express it in the way you want to. And you have to find another way, because that forces you to find another way. And so that's what this story that has nothing to do with me going to nursing school at this point, but that's where it started from. So I would encourage anyone, if you're like, I don't know if I have a novel in me, what is, I don't know, there's something in your way, and that's the thing that's going to create the story, right? If that makes any sense at all, if I was able to communicate that clearly, because that's the most important thing, I think, are those things that are in your way. Those are the things that those obstacles you have to surmount are what what is going to create story. So, and just timeless, let me just quickly say this. I was talking about this with Michael, and I want to throw it out again. I don't know if I finished my thought with him, was that, you're talking about Tartaria, your story. Now, the thing is, I was telling you about how C.S. Lewis wrote the Screwtape Letters. Those were weekly newspaper articles. If you read them, they're not really even chapters. They're like just maybe 1,000-word letter that he published once a week that turned into a novel because he was just pursuing different ideas about how the devil corrupts the soul on a weekly basis. So, I mean, I was saying, this is something you can consider, is all these little short things can find their way into a whole. So I don't know if I had completed that thought with you, so I will say it
No,
now.
that's fair. As a prompt, because we came up with some notes for this too, what are the things that are working for you in making incremental progress? And Ricky, I know you have your hand raised, so if you have a response to that or you want to add thoughts onto what Heidi was saying, go ahead.
Yeah, she raised a bunch of good points, but I zeroed in on something you said. You're like, a novel is so long. What Heidi's demonstrating is that it doesn't have to be perceived that way. And I don't perceive it that way. I look at each chapter as its own little treasure, its own little reward. And every sentence is a poem. I used to write articles and stuff, and it's like I don't write articles because I found that I was not engaging in bliss. And writing is like a huge point of centering and sanity for me. I can't turn it into work, man. I already have work, like writing has to be bliss. It has to be exaltation. Like I'm flying out of the atmosphere of this dreadful world to another one that's fantastic. Even if it's filled with danger and menace, it still is not here, and yay. I don't know what else to say. I got some satisfaction from writing articles, and it was through articles that I really refined my word budget method. But it's not a question of length. It's a question of taking a look at what it actually is. Even if it's 100,000 words, if you were to write 500 or 1,000 words a day, you could blow through it real quick. Last year, I wrote a novella. I wrote this this bloody nightmare called Exsanguinator. I wrote that. That was about, I want to say, 40, 50K. I rewrote a book called Cyberdonia, 100K. And I got about Princes of Turmoil, I got to about 79 or 80K. This year so far, I've written the Book of Draken up to 80K. Both of those, all three of those previously not all. Exsanguinator is its own thing, but all the other books are Afternity's partnership, which is something I'm doing with a friend. He writes, I write. And now I'm writing Wargate, the Kill My Darlings project, and I've been at it for about 2 months, and I'm at 52 or 54K out of 100K budget that I'm swinging for. And I attribute it to the outlining process because I work. I mean, I'm drawing AutoCAD right now as I'm talking to you to make bread and butter. But when that doesn't cycle my brain chemistry, that doesn't bring episodic satisfaction. It just earns money. And I'm a capitalist and whatever, but money is not my objective. My objective is bliss, as in follow your bliss, what Joseph Campbell said to do. It's a secret to changing your brain chemistry. So I lean into creative obsession. And if I write 1,000 to 2,000 words a day, I can go to sleep feeling as if I accomplished something. If it's just making money and breathing and walking around, it's like, to me, I don't know what the point is. But I'm kind of an odd bird, I don't know what you want to call me, a odd duck or whatever. So it is what it is. But it's great to be able to talk process because people can see other people's maneuvering, like word yield, how much a day. I refined some outlines yesterday, and I wrote about 1,200 words to finish a chapter. And I'm looking at the end of this book already, and I just started it 2 months ago. As far as I'm concerned, it's all downhill from here, and I'm just thrilled with it, So yeah.
What does success look like for the projects that you're on? Is it the completion, or is it getting it published and out there? Is it getting a lot of readers?
Well, there are stages. I mean, first things first, you got to have the idea. You got to have the will or the dream or the obsession to write it. Some people say discipline. Deadlines don't work for me because it feels like school, and I was not an apt pupil. I was not, what's the word I'm looking for? I did not excel in a classroom setting. I viewed it as a cubic prison, and some blabbering mouth of apathy was barking at me from the front, and I was surrounded by bullies. So it's like learning in that environment, that was a joke. So, I mean, I got my degree and I did my things and whatever, but it's like I'm self-taught. I don't, and therefore my idea of success has not been shaped by that. It comes in stages. A great idea, a chapter, 10K, a half a book, a whole book. Once the book is there, then you got to go through that agony of editing it. And getting it into place that's ready for a real editor or a beta read. You could have little tiny reads, like alpha reads, I guess, whatever you want to call them, with people you know when it's still imperfect. Success is getting it to that next place. Kill My Darlings exists because my Afternoty project is a darling. And I have books. Like I have a couple novels of that partnership, but it's attached to a giant RPG, like a tabletop role-playing game that my friend and I developed. We have this big rule book. We have part of a saga book, and it's all original stuff, original rules, and it's all attached to the same partnership. So I can't just sell Book of Draken and have some editor rip it to pieces, not knowing what it is. So, I mean, MJ Huntsgood, she said, well, you got to kill your darlings. And I was like, that's a marvelous idea, because now I actually can take this voice and do an experiment. I replicated the Book of Draken voice. I created a whole new character and set of characters to tell a whole different story with the same general beefcake, tanky kind of guy. And he has other people who are like, Draken and Conan are similar, the way Wargate and Draken are similar. My success is to get my foot in the door, and eventually, because I have books on Amazon, and I wanted to get 10 books on Amazon, and then I was going to start swinging at querying, getting an agent, going trad pub, which was at first not really my desire because it seemed very daunting, much more daunting than writing book after book after book. Looking at this monolithic industry with its, there's indifference and there's this and, it's like I don't even know where to begin. But I want everything. I want 10 books in print, 30 different languages, multiple regions throughout the world. I want enough of them where 400 years from now, after World War VI, they can find my book on some shelf somewhere and go, who is that guy? Who cares? But he wrote good. And that's all I really care about, is leaving my impression on print, which I revere so much. You wouldn't have anything, no Bible, no science, no medicine, no fiction, no poetry, no constitution without print, without the singularity, the printing press, et cetera, et cetera. I revere that. I believe in God and I believe in Jesus, but I revere print as a secular, such a powerful force that it needs to be revered because of what it brings to mankind. So I live that obsession, That's my success is so far beyond grasp that it's confined to a dream, because there are goals and stuff. I climb up every little rock in the path like you guys do. But it's a dream that keeps me going through whatever is whatever the weather is,
Yeah, fair. Heidi, how about for you? What is success? What's
What
it
is
look like?
success?
Yeah, for your projects.
I'm going to post this. I like the Thomas Carlyle quote. I think that's ultimately where you mentally have to be. I'll read it. I'll post it after I read it. But he wrote, I know not, to his wife, I know not whether this book is worth anything, nor what the world will do with it. But this I could tell the world. You have not had for 100 years any book that comes more direct and flamingly from the heart of a living man. Do what you like with it. That's kind of, that sums my opinion of it. He said it perfectly. It's like, this is something that I must do. Yes, it'd be great if, like Donna Tartt, I made tons of money and was able to just, put something together every 10 years. But, that doesn't appear to be the case. But I at least not at the moment. I think I'm more focused. I'm going to have to do the critical mass thing to continue to force to get work out. But yeah, I mean, ultimately that's it. I mean, and that's what I said when I started doing this before I was on X, before I finished anything, was, my goal right now is just to write a miserably terrible book. I don't care. It's just as long as it is a book, and to do it as best as I can, and let the world decide. It's beyond me at that point. But one thing that was important to me, and why I kind of self-publish and go indie, is having worked in traditional publishing. And here's something ironic, Mount Timeless. The magazine I worked on was all about AutoCAD, so which is just funny as heck. It doesn't exist anymore. I don't know how old you are, how long you've been around, but it was called Cadence, and there was Catalyst. I think Catalyst might still be around, but I digress. Let's see. So yeah, I mean, the point. Oh my God! I went on my AutoCAD rant and I completely lost my point.
Success,
right? No, it would just be, creating work that you can be proud of, creating work that is true that tells the truth. That's really important to me, is to maintain universal truths. And my book has very strong Christian themes in it. I'm a Christian, and it's important to me to be able to say these things. And this was my point. One of the reasons I never shopped it around with anybody, because, for better or for worse, considering the current environment, I did not want one of two things to happen. One, for changes to be demanded, because for me to write something with Christianity in it, they have, there's a lot of publishers who say you can't have anything dark. It can't be too dark. The jeopardy in the story has to be acceptable to our readers. Well, I'm to me, it's like the jeopardy in the story has to be true to the story. And so I didn't want to be put in a position where I had to manipulate things to fit whatever might be currently popular in the current narrative on any side of it, shall we say. And the other thing that was terrifying is this concept that if you're going with a traditional publisher, you're selling your work to them, and you're really just selling them. The advance is really just a loan on your work, and and they have the option at that point. They own it more than you do. They have the option to shelve it where it never sees the light of day. And I just thought that was something I just didn't want to deal with. I just wanted to be in control of the situation, for better or for worse. So, I mean, success to me is what I'm doing right now. I think going forward, if I make money at it, that would be spectacular. I would love to. I won't lie. But I mean, doing this right now, this is the part that I need to do. So, how's that for a response?
yeah, fair. Poppy, are you available? Are you hanging out? I don't know if you're around, but if you have thoughts on what success looks like for your progress or for songwriting, I feel like that might be a valuable perspective too.
Okay, I put a headset on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, I was so busy listening, I wasn't. Let me take a moment. Well, right now, success is going to be the search for Post-it notes and putting them all in one place. um, let's see. I I think my whole life, as far as I remember, I've always liked to puzzle things out. I've been omnivorous in taking in information, paying attention, and it's like I'm kind of like, how did someone describe it? Describing our brains, all the neurology. We're like opportunistic predators, a huge bunch. Our brain is taken up with visual processing, so survival, right? But I've always been like, I remember a teacher, my brothers are similar, saying like, great, he does great in school, but he needs to learn to leave his daydreams in his book bag, which broke his heart. So Heidi, for me, I just feel this impetus to create, and I am singing off and on all day. My first vocal coach called me a song miner. I mentioned coal miners earlier. I find a song, and I'm the same way with fiction, the same way with poetry, stories, film, media. I'm such an omnivorous consumer that I'm wanting to organize it. And what the compression thing made sense to me. Heidi, you were saying the prison, fight your way out of a prison, and for this little ADHD shiny object person, that for me, and I appreciate Mount Timeless what you said too. There's different ways to structure it, whether it's accountability, like sending your work. I love your idea, Michael, of paying, give somebody $30 to, I mean, or, you can keep it if I don't. So I'm finding, and Gonzalo left it. He and I were in a space the other day, and I mean, I wrote pretty much a song in, I had half of it done in the first 5 minute writing timed writing break, or maybe it was it was a 10-minute break. And I also ate my egg sandwich. So I'm like, those ideas were piled up in there. And it kind of shocked me what came out. And so I'm like, oh, I just have to write. Quit getting ready to get ready to get ready and just start writing. But then it's my little magpie of, I'm thinking, Heidi, I know you don't like censorship. I'm thinking I might have to ban post-it notes or only let one pad of them exist in the house. And the apple didn't fall further. I was telling my mom about that, who's almost 92. And she's got notes all over the place. I loved what you said, that they're never really gone. So I'm rambling my way to an answer. So part of this is about looking at my life and seeing, well, what does she look like she's doing? Wow, I'm interested in many things. So in terms of discipline, and why I've loved this whole thing. I'm going to listen to it again. I love that Heidi said those ideas aren't gone, but also, Michael, we talk about capturing them on the fly. So I think I already have a ton of ideas, so it's going to be about organizing what I have. But I also think there is a little bit in me of, oh, if I don't find that precious curled, folded in and glued to itself wrinkled post-it note where I don't really have to search into infinity. So thank you for that. So I feel like I'm making up my life. I recently retired. I also experienced some actually pretty awfulness at the end of my working life, which isn't like it had been, super stress-free the whole time. So for me, I think a lot of it is just figuring out what I want to do from here. And it seems pretty obvious that being interested in ideas in history and writing, and part of what I've done, I've written a lot of long, like emails, text messages, things. It's like, I loved what you said, Heidi, but I went to nursing school and then it turned out I wanted to write about nursing. I mean, a career of law. I wrote a lot. So I think I like writing. I'm scribbling and scrapping it and I'm putting it here and there, and I'm going to try and not be hard on myself. So I want it as I felt like when I found this space last fall, it was such a refuge for me of, I've just gone through a huge amount. I have I have time under me and I have wisdom, but I can always use more. I just really want to move forward and help to be a little light that I can shine that can help all of us. So it's like, I think creating, I guess I would say writing songs, satisfaction for me will be next to come up with my whole melody. I mean, I've got my lyric, not entirely, but and with artists, there are themes. I think of the Lucinda Williams performed here at the Blues Festival recently, and I didn't go, but the local nonprofit station I've been a member of for decades has part of that show on the radio, and they had her set. And any artist, that whether it's an author, a poet, a songwriter, Joni Mitchell's another I love. I mean, you're tracking their life, and they're writing about other things too. But I guess for me, part of it, of committing now to using my energy towards being creative, I feel like that's a way to actually center and value my existence. And just for those of you who don't know me, I'll be 70 very soon. And so with our society is so ageist and ableist and whatever, and I'm like, I'm just getting started. I remember this must have been 15 years ago. I went to this manicure salon locally, and it's not something I did that often. And I'm sitting there, and this bright yellow little SUV roars up. I think it was a RAV, and a cute elder gets out with great sunglasses on, popped in. She was in the chair next to me. She was in her 80s and just coming in to get a pedicure because she's in a tennis tournament with some younger kids who were in their 70s. She must have gotten continuous texts and phone calls. I'm like, she was a widow, and she was 83. And I'm like, I asked her, I said, so how long have you played tennis your whole life? And she's like, no, I took it up at 50. And by the way, there's some kind of study that playing tennis increases your lifespan. But I kind of thought, okay, I want what she's having, which is about timeless. You talked about bliss. I would like to be, life is filled with struggle, but I would like to be grateful and happy to be here on more days than I'm upset and worrying. And I know I'm going on and on. So for me, this is really an internal, external thing. And I was amazed by that 1 hour writing space. Let's see, we wrote for 20 minutes, no, 10. Then we talked and shared a bit. Then I think we did a 15 and we did a 20. And the compression, by that time compression, or whether it's a word count compression, I guess that was somebody saying, you're just going to do it, whether you have something to say or not. And it turned out, boy, did I have a lot to say. And I scribbled ideas to the side of my song, Michael. I've got 4 more songs waiting. So I know I went on, but I'm making this up as I go along. Getting published somewhere, I guess my goal would be to continue this process of whatever my process is with it that makes me want to write about things, and then to be able to share those songs, to perform them, come up with the melody, the arrangement, all of it. I can't think of anything sweeter than to, so far I've just worked on performing other people's words, but to be able to perform something I created, it just feels like that would be a huge everything of affirming that my life matters, and me taking joy and creating and sharing it is important, versus working and to solve other people's problems and raising a family, both noble endeavors. But that's what I've devoted the bulk of my life to, other than my early years. So thank you. Now I'm crying. I'll be quiet.
That's all right. Yeah.
But I'm very grateful for the space, Michael and Heidi, and all the stuff about process. So helpful.
We're happy that you hang out with us on Tuesdays. And, as a musician for a very long time that wrote and performed, it is really, it's awesome when people react to what you have written, whether it's the words or it's the energy of the live performance. Like, it's, even when you get haters, at least they were inspired, some energy transferred to them, and they felt captivated or, engaged enough with it to have some sort of reaction. Obviously, you want the positive side of things. But, that's either way, whether it's a mosh pit or it's a negative review in a blog, it's still got some kind of traction with them. I don't want to de-emphasize the value of their opinion if it was negative about the band or performance, because hey, maybe we did need to improve something, or maybe it just wasn't for them. Additionally, I have also found those kind of timed writing exercises to be valuable. There was, back in the day when Clubhouse was kind of pioneering the social audio movement before Twitter Spaces took off, there was a group of folks that hosted a Friday night writing session, and they were very short prompt times, and it was very participatory in the sense that like they would put out a prompt, and then everybody would kind of either give a word or just some reflection on the prompt, and then we would take X amount of time to write something and then read it in the group after we had our time reading. So it is a useful tool, and I would say Ricky does his reading spaces, Gonzalo does his workshops, and additionally he's now doing these kind of like impromptu writing sessions. I think across the board, the writing community of Twitter Spaces, I would look at them as an asset and value the opportunities that people give each other to either discuss things like this or promote their work or work together, or get some feedback on a reading. Like, all of those things are part of going from being a writer to being an author, and take advantage of it when you have the time or the patience for it. Ricky, you got your hand raised. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I just have a well said, Michael, by the way. I just have a point of clarity. When you guys talk about building critical mass, is that relative to a creative mindset? And give me some examples of like what you like in other words, to finish a project, to start a new project, like what is your jumping off point for that, quote unquote, reaching critical mass?
So I would say, when we are talking about reaching critical mass, it's about having like product in the market, in that sense, like having beachheads for readers or listeners or viewers to land on wherever they come from, in the sense of like, Heidi has a book out now, but she's working on an audio book. So there are some people that, can't or won't read the book, but they'll listen to it. And that's kind of the same thing that happened for me too. When I put out my first book, the Chicago 1893 book, as I was putting it together, kind of realized like, hey, there's other opportunities for this. I thought about turning it into a documentary. So there's a documentary up on Prime too. And that's a pretty close one-to-one translation of the book onto the screen. But it was in thinking about that and beginning to produce that video that I discovered ACX, which is the Audible platform for uploading your audiobook and getting it distributed on Amazon and Apple Books and Audible. And as I was finishing up the manuscript and doing the layout of the book, it's at that time that I realized like, oh, I'm going to have to do the voiceover for this documentary, but I can also get an additional release out of this as an audiobook. So I did the reading for the documentary voiceover, knowing that that was going to be the audiobook recording that was going to be released. In that way, that project then had, those 4 units. So the paperback, the ebook, the audiobook, and the documentary. Same thing goes for when I got into the follow-up book for that, and I was looking around and saying like, well, what's closest and ready to release? It was a collection of blogs that I had done on national parks. So I gathered all that stuff up and, worked back through the material to edit and make it suitable for book release, and kind of did some bookend chapters that offer a little bit of additional context about what those were, and kind of started that project. And I knew at that point in time that I would have a second book in that series, because not everything fit in the first book. I just wasn't, some of it just wasn't ready, or, it wasn't in good enough shape or whatever to put in that first book. So I was like, well, I'll come back to that material, keep working on it, keep building it out, and then I'll have another book. So it was really a way to, have additional releases and to have new things to promote around and drive traffic to my Amazon author page for people to find stuff and to get additional indexing on search engines or on Amazon search. To have things that I can continue to put out press releases or blog posts about and talk about the work that I do as a writer or as a media engineer in general. And then more recently, I was like, well, the stuff that I started in 2016 that I knew I wanted to put out books with, I kind of started to run out of that material a few years ago and started looking at like, well, okay, what else can I do to continue to release paperbacks? And, I have a few projects in the hopper. Another one, volume 3 of the Exploring Our National Park series will be out this fall. And that's in pretty good shape at this point. Starting layout for that now. I still have a little bit of writing to do, but I've also already started on the audiobook recording. So I use that process as kind of a final editing step in the manuscript to prepare it for layout and print. And in that way, I can kind of work ahead, very non-linear production style that I'm working on at this point, to where I have 7 chapters read. I think I have 3 or 4 edited already on a first run of editing for that. And we'll be able to follow up on that audiobook release after that paperback comes out. But I'm also doing a series of videos on those parks as well. So I'll use that voiceover or I'll use that audiobook reading as the voiceover for those books and write music for it and then put those videos out and seek distribution for those as well. And that's kind of what we are meaning by hitting critical mass, to allow people to keep finding you and discovering the work that you have out, the catalog of books that you have. I mean, we want readers. I'm not gonna say I don't want people to read my stuff. I don't care if people find it. I do. I want people to enjoy the things that I've enjoyed producing or just enjoyed learning about in a journalistic sense, and being able to offer up the photography that I do while traveling, or even the pictures inside of the Chicago 1893 book. And like that started as a long form Twitter thread. Honestly, I was posting all of those pictures and writing a little blurb. And as I was getting like 2/3 of the way through that, I was like, this is a lot of material. I can probably do something else with it. And that's how it became the book. So that's, I think what Heidi and I mean in terms of hitting critical mass.
Yeah,
I see. So it's more or less an industrial output as opposed to generating concepts or a creative angle in this particular case. Very good.
Maybe it's both.
It's both.
Okay,
so
in the creative sense, you're saying to have stuff to mill and work into projects. So critical mass also has a creative output. Do you find yourself, and this question goes to anybody, do you guys find yourself struggling to generate creative material? Or
well, see, there's the rub, right? So you've got content. You want to put out content, but there's this idea.
Is Heidi speaking?
Marketing.
Yeah, she is.
Oh man, Elon, why have you forsaken me? I'm gonna be right back. It's like the 3rd time I'm bopping in and out here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, come on back.
He hates you today, man. I'll wait till he gets back. But yeah, it's both, right? So, but it's a difficult balance. Hey, Mount Timeless, can you hear me now? Let me bring you back up to speaker. All right, get him back up.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I like Elon, but gee whiz already. What were you saying, Heidi? Could you just quickly summarize?
Okay. All right. So it's both. I mean, Michael, I agree with what Michael was saying. It's like you need your content to be, first off, yes, it's hard to put out a lot of content. That's the thing, right? I mean, it all has to be, you can't just put out junk with your name on it and say, look at all the stuff I have out. That's not what you want to do, because then people are going to stop wanting to look at all the stuff you have out, because you've lost credibility. So this is the rub of it, right? You need to put out good content, which takes a lot of work, and some people are faster at it than others. Some people are more consistent at it. You have to keep your and it's all about the content. I mean, you have nothing to market if you don't have your content. But you can put your content out in all these different ways, as Michael was pointing out. You know how he's got them in all this sort of the same stuff, but presented in all these different formats. That's one way. They do. I mean, you can get into the marketing of this. People say write loss leaders. So put out a short story or a prequel to your novel, that's like, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000 words, 30,000 words, I think was the number. I'm trying to remember. Put it out for free so that it will draw people into the larger product. They'll say things like, put your first book out for free, then everyone will buy the second book. There's all these little games you can play with marketing, which may or may not work. I'm not poo-pooing them, shall we say. It's just, there's all different ways of doing this, but ultimately it comes up to having enough stuff out there that you are a trusted source. And when Will was in here earlier, that's kind of what he was saying. It's like, they want to work with someone is this person a unicorn like Donna Tartt, who puts something out every 10 years and everyone loves it. So good for her. I don't say that begrudgingly at all. Good for her. Seriously. I mean, that's her style and she's been very effective at it. But for the majority of us, that's the reason he referred to her as a unicorn, because she can do that. But for the majority of us, you need to just keep creating content on a regular basis so that people know that you're consistent. They can trust you to continue to provide something of a certain level of quality that they want to be involved with. And Will was pointing that out with screenwriters. They will hire people who they know can be consistent. And you see that you see that with the romance novelists. They may not write the most spectacular books, they may not go down in history like, say, Shakespeare did, but they're consistent and they're providing a consistent level of content and product that is enjoyable to the reader, that offers them something, and I'm not denigrating them at all. I'm not saying what they're doing isn't good. There's a lot of good people writing books in that genre and that deserve a lot of credit, probably more than they're getting. Because let's be honest, if you're writing that much, your writing is going to get good. You can't help but get better at something you're doing on a consistent basis. So I think that's really what it is. I think when I say critical mass, ultimately what it's doing is it's showing the world, shall we say, that you're consistent and that you can provide a product and they will come back to get it. It's a relationship you've built, right, with your reader, shall we say, in this scenario. But it's a trust relationship. They can trust you to do something, and that's what a critical mass ultimately is doing. It's developing a level of trust where they're giving you money for giving them something they want to pay for. Does that does that kind of help? I mean, that's basically, in essence, it is put out a lot of stuff, but don't put out a lot of crap, I think, is the other part of critical mass that should be considered.
Yeah, I think it clarifies and it makes sense. Very good. Yeah.
Puppy, you got your hand raised.
Well, Heidi, I didn't write it down, but I believe you said you were quoting someone that to write something good of high quality that you can become trusted, etc., you have to write a ton of crap. I mean, you have to write a lot. And so my bluegrass teacher, I loved it, was like, when learning to play leads, like pick out the melody, he's like, listen, the most important advice I can give you is dare to suck. In other words, I'm not a beginner at writing, and I'm going to be curating. Part of what I'm hearing is to have a lot of content, you have to be writing a lot. You have to be creating a lot. If you're in this room, I wonder if you've already been doing that. So I don't know, threading back to my Post-it note, we earlier in the space, we're talking about tools we could use to organize projects. But yeah, having enough ideas isn't it, but voicing it in my literal case. was what that time compression exercise and attending all these spaces, whatever, has allowed me to do. So I think for me, I'm going to want to be disciplined. And I will read that book by Stephen King. And I think there's other writers that have said the same thing, right? They just, whether they wrote from 2 a.m. to 6 but the habit thing, just like don't assume all the whatever, but clear enough space in my house and my head, and then just join those writing spaces for now. Because I was amazed by it was the power of sort of the relationships, which is one thing I appreciate about these spaces and what you said in general about the writing community on here. And I found that to be such a haven and a difference from other spaces that I might be in for other reasons, information, advocacy, et cetera. But to have sort of a, not judgment free in terms of discernment free, but that just being creative is in itself, in a way, a revolutionary act, or a planetary friendly act, because we're stopping, we're not consuming, we're creating. And I loved what you said too, Michael, about why make it hard on yourself. Sometimes I think that's the way I MacGyver things. Like, okay, here's how this could be done. Now, how could you add 10 more steps? Whatever. But if you're producing a lot, if you're writing a lot, if you're assuming, for my case, that my voice matters, that I have something to say, then it's literally getting it out from inside and capturing it, and then finding a way to sort of, I've gotten a lot of great ideas today about how I can save ideas on the fly, how I can put things in files, because I said my challenge is in organizing it. And then Timeless, I'm looking forward to your book too, because what you're really doing with your 10,000, I can't remember how many words, and breaking it down, you've got, in a way, an artificial, but it works, an efficient structure. You were talking about being efficient, Michael. So whether that's time compression, it seems like we could all get there different ways, but the thing is, to have forward movement, you got to keep creating. And then if you're going to be publishing, right, obviously you're all on that whole other level for me. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. I hope that was useful.
Yeah, for sure. I would say maybe similar in the way that I use Sundays to write, or edit audio or anything along those lines, just having that dedicated time. And I know a lot of people try and dedicate time every day. I cannot do that for writing currently. But maybe you have to dedicate time to the organizational and housekeeping side of things, to where it's like you're creative regularly, but getting all of that stuff put together or structured or organized, like that's the thing that you need to carve out a little bit of dedicated space for, so that you can keep making progress on the projects you want to finish, or to make sure that like you're advancing the things that you have already created.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It's hard for a lot of us to find that time. I know I think I saw J.K. Rowling said she writes 8 hours a day. I mean, she says she spends 90% of her time writing. And she's written, I mean, it's really interesting to me, because she could be like Donna Tartt. She's far more successful than Donna Tartt. I mean, good grief. And she's produced far more books. She doesn't need to write anymore, I don't think. She could just, rest on her laurels at this point. So you understand the impetus for it is a, I must do this. There's a thing to it. It's like it goes beyond just the money, I think. But but for those of us who don't have 8 hours a day to spend writing, which is, I mean, I think I had that during COVID, but I don't have it anymore. But, one thing you can do is sort of set a weekly word count, so that maybe, like whatever it might be, it's like, what is reasonable for you to get done in a week. So, pardon me, I had to cough. So that would be something to do. Is it 3,000 words? Is it 5,000 words? Is it 1,000 words? Is that what you can do that week? Set it that way, so that you can work towards. So you have something making you accountable, and I think that's what's so good about those writing spaces. The the sprints that Gonzalo was doing. And I'd suggest anyone just go in there. You don't have to talk or anything. You just sort of listen. It's like, we're sprinting now for 20 minutes, or you just sit down and write for 20 minutes. Anyone can do that, right? It's like anyone can do, can jog for a minute or something. It's the same mentality, but the fact that you're kind of in a space with other people, it's accountability. That's the thing that really makes a difference. And I think that's an important thing. That's that, I'll give you $30 to read this, or like the thing with Jennifer Saunders and Don French with the absolutely fabulous TV show, right? Where they made a bet, that created accountability. So something had to happen. So I think that's really important to have that sort of accountability, which is, also designed as, can also be deadlines, can also be requirements. I mean, and, the honest truth is, yes, sometimes we don't hit that, but I don't know. I work really well with people throwing deadlines at me. I work really well with accountability because I don't want to let anyone down. It's like, I'm happy. Maybe it's just a mentality. I don't know if I'm the only one like this. I'm more likely to let myself down than I am anybody else. And so, I mean, use that. If you know that about yourself, use that, because whatever works. And I think that might be true of most of us. Most of us are much less likely to want to let others down than we are, and then we don't have a problem letting ourselves down. We are vicious to our own selves far more than we are to anyone else. So I don't know if that helps, but that's kind of how I view it.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't like missing deadlines. I come from copywriting, client work, journalism side of things. From back when my creative writing was music for a long time, which again, like, I'm not an incredibly prolific songwriter, but very good with deadlines in terms of, okay, do I need X amount of songs to make a record? Do I need X amount of words to make an article or a blog post or whatever it is for client work? So that, to me, going from outlining to release day, I can kind of give myself some milestones to follow along with. We've been going for 2 hours. We typically go for 2 hours here on the Writer's Block. Are there any final thoughts or comments people want to make today?
Thank you for hosting this space. It's wonderful to hear the creative community, writing community get together and go over these matters. It shows how serious and committed people are to their creativity. I know I am. So I love hearing this talk. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this has been a great discussion. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward we can do stuff like this on a monthly basis. We meet every Tuesday. For those who aren't here, hey, Plane Runner, I know you're driving and stuff, but it's good to see you always. And Shola and Ghostbuster, welcome. We do this every Tuesday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. We'll do different topics. Today we were just sort of kind of having brainstorming, so it was really great. So thanks, Michael. Michael's hosting with me now, and it's been this was his idea, and I think it was a great idea to kind of have everybody sort of check in, and to kind of, it's just sort of an accountability tool we can all use together. So, Plane Runner, you want some last words, sir?
Oh, sure, why not? Yeah, sorry, I was my schedule lately has just been a mess. But I just wanted to back up what you were saying about giving yourself. I think the word count goal, especially when you're drafting, is incredibly helpful. And fortunately, most of us, unless you're using pen and paper, and if you are, full props to you. But most of us are using some kind of software that'll give you a word count, and you can just watch it at the bottom, and you're like, yep, I know I hit 500 today. And if I didn't, you can be a little gracious to yourself and say, oh, okay, today was only 300, but maybe in that 300, there was some pretty good stuff. And, the next day you're like, well, I'll get an extra 100 in, I'll make it up on the back. I know that's how I came at it especially during COVID, when I did not have a commute. I basically replaced my evening commute with writing time, and I could usually get 500 words done in an hour. And I set a goal for myself of 3,000 words a week. And that gave me at least one night for life to intervene if necessary. And, sometimes I didn't hit it, and I'd have weekends where I'd, tell my family, sorry, I'm going to be down the rabbit hole today for, I've got, 1,200 words to make up or something like that. But, the more you do it, the more the story just stays fresh in your head. And, you have all those hooks to come back to the next day. You don't feel like you're spinning your wheels, just trying to find your place again. I always tried to not have more than a day off at the most. But yeah, I think and it adds up. You just kind of keep going, and you'd be amazed. All of a sudden you're like, wow, I have 60,000 words. I have 100,000 words, whatever it is. And yeah, the amount of work it's going to take to pull all that together and edit it downstream. Yeah, I've spent the last year editing, and I'm almost there. There's so many logistics to self-publishing that I'm still getting my arms around, and it's kind of killed a lot of my momentum of actual writing. But I kind of knew going in that was just the way it was going to go. So anyway, I think good work habits are the thing to build, whatever that looks like for you. If that's setting aside time daily, if that means being a little more organized. I know for me, I carry a lot of my story in my head. I've got a lot of notes down. I actually throw notes down and rarely go back to them. It's just the act of putting them down sort of cements them in my head, and or at least anything that needs to stick, gets there. But Tolkien used that expression, the leaf mold, and I think that's what most of my notes are. It's just piling stuff up and seeing what grows out of there. And so anyway, yeah, it's great space. I miss all you guys. I'm glad I was able to jump in for a little bit. Thanks, Heidi.
Well, thanks. I would just reiterate that that everything you said is awesome. What was the one point I wanted to just kind of outline was, well, it was really important. But yeah, and I can't remember. I'm going to stop. Sorry. I've lost it after about 2 hours. Anyway, bear with me.
Yeah, we're making it. We're here together. Puppy, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I love you, Heidi. Just thank you both so much for the space. And I love it that you're setting this project up so that it's benefiting you to check in with each other and to move your projects forward. So you're role modeling the very thing we're going to be doing and teaching and talking. And so today I want you to know the room that I'm going to be working in is actually much more organized than it was. Just having you here, it reduced my confusion picking each thing up. What am I doing? So when you're asking I was in the other room like scrubbing a dish, but ran back to where the phone was because you're like, what are your goals? I felt like I rambled a little, but with the format. So I think discipline, regularity, that accountability that helps me so much. And I just think, in the legal world, right? I mean, the court date is the court date, and the briefs are due, and et cetera. And there's extensions, but there were definitely always folks that every time had an extraordinary extension. And you're right. I mean, that makes sense that publishers would want to work with somebody that looks like. I mean, it was not that different from a circumstance that I was involved in with hiring of people who would issue decisions. Like, you don't want someone who's going to work for 2 years over the perfect opinion. I mean, people want their cases decided. So but neither do you want to release something that's not correct and that's got a typo. And so, or, down to that level. So that's why you have so many different eyes on it and whatever. But I'm really looking forward to re-listening to the space, and I'm going to check out the tools that you mentioned. I think Obsidian, and I'm realizing that I already have on my notes feature lots of stuff. So I think I'll just do the old manual method if I can find Obsidian where I can throw stuff in folders, because that's the other problem I run into with filing ideas and whatever, sorry, you want to end the space, is then I can't find it again. So for me, I'll just be looking for ways to, because some stuff I do want to be able to find again, and maybe even easily. But anyway, we're beginning with the Post-it notes. Post-it notes are no longer sacred. And by the way, I've got a couple boxes of Post-it notes. So just let me know your address. And yeah, thank you so much for the space. And I've already been doing a lot of processes while we talked. So one of them, I found my songwriting notebook. Yay!
Very good. Plain, you got your hand raised. Last thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to say something really quick on the whole accountability thing. Sorry, Mike, got a frog in my throat. The whole like give a friend $30 and so on and so forth. I will tell you, the one that I did for myself, I had read it somewhere, was like, write a check to an organization that you antithetically or disagree with, and give it to a friend and be like, if I don't deliver this on this day, you must put this in the mail. I didn't have the guts to do that one, but I did. I did say to a friend, I'm going to give you money, and if I don't get this done, you are allowed to buy a jersey from the hockey team that I most oppose, and I will wear it. And so just that thought alone terrified me to like keep me moving. So anyway, you can make it fun, but give it some teeth. That's all I have to say.
Good incentives against yourself, I suppose, in that way. Yeah, so... Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Heidi.
No, I just think that's funny. And, I remembered what I wanted to say that Plain Writer said that I think is something to definitely consider is if you're writing on a regular basis and you stay in your story, and he pointed this out, it really opens your story up because you're consistent, and it really opens your creativity up to do that. I would just reiterate that. On that said, I think this has been great. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate you all coming.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be doing this version of the space once a month. The next one will be August 20th. I am thinking by then I'll have the Fall of Tartaria released, at least the ebook version, if not the audiobook version. No, I'll have the audiobook version read. That performance will be done. Possibly have started the manuscript for Volume 3 of Exploring Our National Parks. Heidi, you'll be done with your audiobook by then. That's what I'm hearing. That's the word on the street.
By August 20th?
Yeah, I'm just teasing.
I don't know, because my issue is I've got to travel. My son's starting college, so I have to. It's a little disruptive right now, but I'm pushing through. I will offer my accountability. I'm going to try and get as many chapters done as I can. I'll set up a schedule with Chris coming maybe Wednesday, and maybe I'll share it just for my unending shame, because in that way I'll have to meet it.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah, I would say, and that's the thing about making incremental progress, right? Just a little bit, chip away a little bit at a time. You also have the manuscript for the second book, so maybe take a note today on how much you have, both for the audiobook and the second manuscript, and then that way you'll be able to kind of report how much you got done between now and then. That's a month, even with all of the other obligations you have, and at least that way you can kind of chart your progress against time. Also, Heidi will be out for a couple of weeks in early August because of that travel, going out and getting her son situated in the dorm. We will be keeping the space going. I'm digging up a couple of guest hosts to keep the conversation flowing, so we don't have to not have the space. It's better to have some conversation and hang out and discuss some different topics. So we've got one topic and one guest host lined up for that period of time. But as for today, we'll say goodbye, and we'll talk to you next Tuesday on the Writer's Block.